For years you have been your harshest judge. How many times have you told yourself that you're not enough, that you should have done more, that you can never fail? That inner voice, demanding and persistent, becomes an invisible prison. Silent, but relentless. But today I want to offer you something different, a space to breathe, to stop punishing yourself for every mistake, for every misunderstood emotion, for every part of you that is still healing. Through the teachings of Buddhism, we will discover how to release that constant judgment and replace it with a compassionate, present, and truly liberating gaze. If this message resonates with you, if you're ready to release self-judgment and embrace compassion, take the first step today. Pause, breathe, choose kindness over criticism. Comment below. What's one thing you'll forgive yourself for today? Subscribe for more tools to cultivate inner peace. Share this with someone who needs to hear, "You are enough." The journey begins now. The hidden cycle of self-criticism. You can't always see guilt, but you feel it. It's in that thought that appears after every decision, in the quiet doubt that makes you question whether you did the right thing, whether you were enough, whether you hurt someone. It's a constant echo that lives in the mind, fed by years of demands, comparisons, and fear of failure. This cycle begins subtly. Maybe it was a criticism you heard as a child, or the need to please in order to be loved, and without realizing it, you began speaking harshly to yourself, treating yourself as if you always needed to correct, adjust, or improve something to finally be worthy. But in that pursuit of perfection, you disconnected from your humanity. From a Buddhist perspective, this judging voice is not your enemy, but it's also not your truth. It's a mental construct, a habit conditioned by your environment, your culture, your own unhealed wounds. Suffering arises when you fully identify with that voice, believing that you are your mistakes, your failures, your moments of weakness, but you are not. Imagine carrying an invisible backpack full of stones. Each stone represents unresolved guilt, an internal demand, a phrase you've repeated 1,000 times. Living like this is exhausting, not because life is too heavy, but because you carry it without pause, without awareness, without compassion. And the most painful part, this cycle repeats daily. You wake up in a rush, demand results from yourself, punish yourself for feeling, and at the end of the day, instead of rest, you find more judgment. It's as if you could never sit peacefully with yourself, but there is a way out. And it begins when you recognize that this way of treating yourself is not natural. It was learned, and everything learned can be unlearned. The path of healing is neither linear nor immediate, but every small act of compassion breaks a link in the chain. And little by little, the inner space that was once filled with judgment begins to transform into a place of presence and relief. The Buddhist perspective on inner judgment. In Buddhism, the mind is like a garden. It can flourish in compassion or drown in weeds if left uncared for, and one of the most persistent weeds is inner judgment, not because the mind is evil or wants to destroy you, but because it operates from fear, repetition, and conditioning. It believes that by judging you, it will protect you, but in reality, it imprisons you. The Buddha taught that suffering arises from attachment to a perfect image of yourself, to what you think you should have been, to an impossible ideal. This attachment disguises itself as self-criticism, but beneath it is a constant denial of the present moment of the self as it is now. When you observe that inner voice with mindfulness, without reacting, without engaging in its game, something begins to change. You are no longer the character, trapped in the scene. You are the silent witness, and that witness does not judge. It simply sees. In many Buddhist monasteries, monks spend hours each day sitting in silence, not to empty the mind of thoughts, but to observe them, letting them pass. Like clouds in the sky, some dark, some bright, but all fleeting. What remains is the sky itself, your awakened awareness. The critical mind, when unquestioned, runs life on autopilot. But Buddhism offers a counter-practice, mindfulness, sati, looking at each thought with openness, curiosity, without clinging. And that includes the harshest thoughts. I'm not enough. I failed again. I should be different. When observed without attachment, they lose their power. They dissolve. Thich Nhat Hanh once said, "When the mind is still, it can see clearly, and when it sees clearly, it understands. And when it understands, it stops punishing." This is the foundation of transformation. You don't need to destroy your inner judgment. You need to understand it, to see where it comes from, what it fears, what it tries to protect. And in that understanding, compassion is born. This isn't about fighting your mind. It's about becoming its master, not its slave, and that happens by cultivating an inner gaze that doesn't seek to punish, but to understand, that doesn't demand perfection, but truth. And in that fertile ground, the internal, war ends, freedom begins to bloom. The story of the monk and forgiveness. In a secluded temple in the mountains of Southeast Asia, a young monk made a mistake that affected the entire community. He felt so ashamed that he voluntarily began carrying a huge stone every day as a form of penance. From dawn until dusk, he dragged it with him through the monastery garden. He didn't speak much. His lowered gaze spoke for him. Days, weeks, even months passed. An elder master watched him in silence, with respect, until one morning he approached the young monk and asked, "Do you think the weight of that stone is greater than the weight of what you feel?" The monk, with tears in his eyes, replied, "No, what hurts the most isn't the stone, it's the voice inside me that says, I don't deserve peace." Then the master sat beside him and said something simple but profoundly liberating. Guilt doesn't dissolve with punishment but with understanding. You've already seen the mistake, now let it go. The stone has nothing more to teach you. This story, shared in different Buddhist schools, illustrates something essential. Often we drag around old guilt not because it still makes sense, but because we don't believe we deserve to let it go. But clinging to pain isn't humility, it's a form of stagnation. Freeing yourself from guilt doesn't mean forgetting or denying. It means no longer beating yourself up inside over something that has already passed. As the Buddha himself said, holding on to anger or remorse is like grasping a burning coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. In the end, you are the one who gets burned. The silent weight of I am not enough. There's a phrase many carry without realizing it. I am not enough. It isn't shouted. It isn't posted. It isn't easily shared. It lives in the silences after mistakes, in the discomfort of looking in the mirror, in the fear of being discovered as flawed. It's a belief that settles in like a permanent whisper and slowly conditions the entire way of living. This feeling often stems from deep emotional wounds. Maybe you grew up in an environment where love was conditional, where every acknowledgement came with a demand. Or perhaps you faced constant comparisons, messages that being you wasn't enough. And so, little by little, you began seeing yourself through others' eyes, more like a task than a complete being. From the contemplative view of Buddhist tradition, this wound isn't a personal mistake. It's a reflection of the confused ego, which seeks validation externally and forgets its true nature. The conditioned self, the one that believes it needs to be perfect to deserve love, doesn't see that sufficiency is already there, only covered by layers of fear and self-demand. Thinking, I should be different is like trying to reach the horizon. No matter how much you walk, you'll never arrive, because the problem isn't what's missing. It's the belief that you lack something in order to love yourself. And that belief isn't healed by achievements, applause, or perfection. It's healed with truth, a truth that says you are already valuable just for existing. You don't need to accumulate merits to rest in your own presence. Even your broken parts are worthy of care, of listening, of embrace. Walking through life believing you're not enough is like living in a house without windows. Everything seems darker than it really is, but all it takes is opening a small crack of compassion for the light to enter. And when that light enters, you can no longer look at yourself with the same eyes as before. When you release guilt, something is reborn. There are moments when the soul simply tires, not from what the world demands, but from the pressure you impose on yourself. Guilt, that silent companion many carry, becomes a weight that not only exhausts, but also distorts your perception of who you are and what you deserve. Holding on to guilt is like clenching your fist around the past. The tighter you grip, the more it hurts. But when you let go, when you open the hand of your soul and allow that weight to dissolve, something deeply healing happens. This isn't about erasing what you've lived. It's about no longer turning every memory into a new wound. In Buddhist teachings, there's a profound understanding of the human process. Perfection isn't expected. Presence is cultivated. Buddhism doesn't say, forget. It says, look with compassion. Recognizing what you've done from a state of loving awareness not only heals but restores the dignity your inner judgment had stolen. Sometimes we think we deserve to suffer for our mistakes. That pain is a just punishment. But that logic only prolongs the harm. Chronic guilt prevents true learning because instead of growing, you stagnate in self-accusation. But when you look at yourself with understanding, a new strength emerges, the strength of inner rebirth. Freeing yourself from guilt is allowing life to flow within you again. It's giving yourself permission to keep walking without invisible chains, to say, yes, I made mistakes, but I'm also learning, I'm changing, I'm awakening. In that instant, the story changes. You stop being the punished character and become the protagonist who transforms, because there is no real growth without tenderness, no evolution without forgiveness, and every time you choose understanding over self-blame, a part of you breathes freely again. Cultivating a compassionate gaze. Looking at yourself harshly may seem normal. Many grew up hearing that only with discipline can you advance, that only with criticism can you improve. But that rigid, demanding gaze ends up closing more doors than it opens. Compassion, though many associate it with weakness, is actually one of the most revolutionary forces you can cultivate within yourself. In the Buddhist path, there's an ancient practice known as metta bhavana, the meditation of loving kindness. This practice isn't a superficial wish for well-being. It's a deep training of the heart to open, soften, and heal. And it begins with you. Repeat phrases like, "May I be at peace. May I be free from suffering. May I treat myself with tenderness." Not as empty affirmations, but as seeds that over time germinate within your consciousness. Changing the way you speak to yourself transforms your inner world, because your thoughts create your emotional atmosphere. And when you start replacing judgment with understanding, the mind no longer becomes a battlefield but a refuge. Think, how would you comfort someone you deeply love in a difficult moment? Now imagine offering yourself that same presence, that same soft tone, that same patience, because you also deserve that gesture, not because of merit, but because of humanity. Practicing self-compassion doesn't mean justifying everything. It means understanding where your feelings, actions, and needs come from. It's looking with the eyes of the soul, not the eyes of judgment. And when that gaze becomes a habit, you begin to inhabit yourself with more tenderness and less fear. Releasing the past, the now as the path. Many live trapped in scenes that have already ended, reliving past conversations, mistakes, decisions over and over. It's as if yesterday keeps breathing inside the body, occupying space in the heart, stealing the light of the present. But no matter how much you look back, you can never change what has already happened, and yet you can change how you hold it. In Buddhist philosophy, the present moment isn't just a refuge, it's the only place where transformation is possible. While the mind clings to the past, the soul weakens, but when you choose to fully inhabit the now, something reboots. A space opens, where life regains movement, clarity, direction. Imagine walking along a path, carrying a backpack full of stones. Each stone represents a memory, a guilt, a scene that hasn't closed. What would happen if, instead of continuing, you stopped for a moment, opened the backpack, and began letting go of one stone at a time? This isn't a symbolic act, it's a real process. Each conscious breath, each decision made from presence is one less stone, and with each stone you leave behind, your walk becomes lighter, quieter, truer. The now doesn't demand that you be ready, perfect, or resolved. It only asks that you sit with yourself even if there's discomfort, that you breathe even if there's confusion, because even in the midst of chaos, the present has the power to restore you. Walking toward freedom isn't about escaping the past. It's about embracing this moment with all that you are and all that you no longer need to be. And when you do, you discover something powerful. You don't need to change your history to start anew. You only need to be present with it from a different place. Being kind to yourself is revolutionary. In a world that rewards constant productivity, self-demand, and silent competition, treating yourself with kindness may seem like a small act, but in reality, it's deeply radical. Because being kind to yourself is saying no to the internal system that demands you be more, do more, perform always. It's giving yourself permission to be human. That tenderness you often offer others, to a tired friend, a sad child, a loved one who's struggling, also belongs to you. You don't need to earn it. You don't need to justify it. You only need to remember it. In the Buddha's teaching, there's a powerful truth. Genuine love isn't born from demand, but from recognition, recognizing that you deserve rest, pause, understanding, even on days when you don't feel strong, even when your mind tells you otherwise. Being kind to yourself isn't indulgence. It's wisdom, because only a mind treated with respect can flourish. Only a well-cared-for heart can open without fear. And when you cultivate that kindness toward yourself, you don't just change your inner dialogue, you change your energy. And that energy transforms how you inhabit the world. Maybe no one taught you to speak to yourself with affection. Maybe the inner voice you hear isn't even yours, but a learned inheritance. But today you can choose differently. You can be the refuge you've always sought outside. Because every gentle word, every caring gesture, every guilt-free pause is a silent form of revolution. Sometimes you don't need a grand answer. Sometimes you don't need a grand answer to change your life. You just need a moment of truth, an instant when something inside you says, I no longer want to live from guilt. I no longer want to be my own enemy. And that instant, as simple as it seems, can mark the beginning of a new path. You've walked for a long time, carrying a weight that never truly belonged to you. You've judged, demanded, compared. You've spoken harshly to yourself, thinking, that would make you better. But the truth is, judgment didn't transform you. What transforms, what truly heals, is understanding. The ancient Buddhist masters knew this well. The most important journey isn't outward, but inward. And every time you choose compassion, you take a step toward your inner home, a place where you can breathe without guilt, where you can make mistakes without losing your dignity, where you can simply be and still feel whole. Today, maybe for the first time, you can look inside yourself and recognize something new. Not as someone searching for flaws, but as someone discovering beauty in imperfection. Not as someone wanting to escape themselves, but as someone choosing to stay with patience and tenderness. This isn't the end. It's a silent rebirth, an invitation to live from another place, lighter, more present, more real. And in that new space, peace will no longer be a distant goal. It will be the natural way of existing. If this message touched something inside you, leave it in the comments. What part of you is ready to be reborn? What guilt, what judgment, what pain are you ready to release? The Great Homecoming, a manifesto for radical self-acceptance. You stand at the threshold of a revelation so profound, it will unravel a lifetime of conditioning. What if everything you've believed about your inadequacies was a distortion? What if your deepest wounds hold the very keys to your liberation, the illusion that bound you? For decades, perhaps since childhood, you've been fed poisonous myths, that struggle equals worthiness, that self-denial is virtuous, that you must earn the right to exist. These aren't truths. They're psychological chains forged in the fires of cultural conditioning. The great tragedy, you've polished these chains until they shone like jewelry, mistaking your captivity for identity. The Buddhist revelation. The Buddha didn't teach self-improvement. He taught self-remembering. When you peel back the layers of the not good enough story, the if only I were different fantasy, the I'll rest when I've proven myself lie, what remains is your original face, the one you had before the world told you who to be. This isn't spirituality, it's revolution. Your liberation protocol. The atomic pause. Disrupt the pattern. Next time your inner critic attacks, freeze mid-thought, place a hand on your heart. Whisper, this voice isn't mine, it's what I was taught. This 3-second rebellion rewires neural pathways formed over lifetimes. The scorched earth compassion. Burn the old ways. For every judgment, lazy becomes I honor my need for restoration. Failure becomes I'm collecting data for growth. Too much becomes my capacity for feeling is heroic. The stone ceremony, physical liberation. Today, perform this ritual. Find an actual stone, name it aloud. You are my shame about. Bury it or cast it into water. Wash your hands with intention. I cleanse what never belonged to me. Why this changes everything. Your transformation creates a quantum field of possibility. Each time you choose presence over perfection, embrace paradox over purity, honor your humanity over some spiritual ideal, you make it exponentially easier for others to do the same. This isn't self-help, it's cultural alchemy. Your sacred assignment, declare your emancipation, comment, I am freeing myself from shu, name it to break its spell, initiate one. Others share this with someone still trapped in the not enough matrix mark. This moment set a calendar reminder for 1 year from today with the note, remember when you thought you weren't free. Look how far we've come. The final truth. There is no after when you're healed. No mythical future version of you more deserving of love. The miracle you seek is in the way you hold yourself right now, in the gentleness of your next breath in, the mercy of your next thought, in the courage to stop waiting for permission to exist. The prison door was never locked. You were just never told you could leave. Walk out. Thank you for being here. With gratitude, Daily Dharma.